Good morning, everybody. Let's cultivate our motivation. So lots of times we hear in the teachings, sentient beings want happiness and to avoid suffering equally. But due to their ignorance, they create the causes for suffering. And sometimes it looks like they're running towards creating the causes for suffering. And so we hear that, and we say yes, and we have a few examples in our mind. But we still, at least many of us, hold in the back of our mind, oh, but there's human beings here, and human beings have exceptional intelligence. And so anytime they do something really drastically awful, that's an aberration. Well, if we think in terms of everybody's potential to become fully awakened, yes, the negativities are aberrations. But when we think of what the nature of samsara is, and being born under the control of afflictions and karma, then we see that people creating the causes of suffering is not an aberration, it's just the nature of samsara. And to expect other living beings to be perfect, to expect the world to be as we think it should be, to expect others to keep good ethical conduct. Those are nice dreams, but they aren't based on the reality of all of us being born under the influence of afflictions and karma. So in one way, we have to accept the reality of our samsara and not hold unrealistic expectations. But at the same time, we need to know that everybody has the potential to become fully awakened Buddhas, and that there are countless beings who have already completed that path and are here to help us and guide us, so that we can do the same. And also when we think of our interdependence with other sentient beings, their kindness is very evident to us. So it's like we have to hold two very different images of what sentient beings are. And see, they're not completely one, they're not completely the other. So to not freak out when people do harmful things, because we remember that they've been kind to us and that they have the Buddha nature. And when we see their kindness and we see them acting ethically and being kindly, to not then say, well, all the other stuff has instantaneously vanished. So we always have hope, we always have optimism, but we're grounded in what is. And so that two-pronged approach is what enables us to generate the bodhicitta, because we want to be of great benefit to sentient beings, and we know they have the potential for that. and also that they need it, that they're under the influence of afflictions and karma. And to see that we are as well. And so the necessity of purifying our own mind and generating good qualities to be able to fulfill the Bodhisattva aspiration. And so for that reason, we're listening to Shantideva's instructions today. Okay, so we've been continuing to talk about Chapter 5 on guarding alertness, which really emphasizes the importance of mindfulness, holding in our mind virtuous actions, virtuous objects, or at least neutral ones, and what they call vigilance or introspective awareness or clear knowing. There's many translations that enables us to check up what is going on with our body, speech, and mind. Okay. So Shantideva's latest advice last session to us was, when I am about to act and I see that my mind is tainted with defilement, at such a time, I should just blurt it all out all over everybody else and they have to deal with it. No, that's not what Shantideva says. He says, at such a time, I should remain like a piece of wood. That doesn't mean we shut down and we're like, catatonic or something. It means that, a piece of wood doesn't act. Yeah, so when our mind is overwhelmed with defilement, that's not the time to act. Yeah, it's the time to calm the mind down so we don't stir up, disadvantageous things with other people or create a lot of negative karma ourselves. And then now he gives us a lot of very practical instructions on how to do it. So the first thing was, never should I look around distractedly for no purpose. With a resolute mind, I should always keep my eyes cast downward. So again, that doesn't mean that you hang your head down like this and you look at your belly button all the time and you're unfriendly. It means that when you're walking and you know that you could harm other living beings, you have your eyes in front of you, and that you're not always kind of looking around, window shopping, looking for interesting things to look at or attractive people or something else to distract you. Okay? But we shouldn't become too rigid about that. Okay, because verse 36 says, in order to relax the gaze, for a short time I should look around, and if someone appears in my field of vision, I should look at them and say, welcome. So we should be friendly people, and not like, I am so mindful, I am not looking at you, I'm not looking at you, I'm just mindful of chewing my raisin. Okay? Yeah, when it's time to chew your raisin, chew your raisin. Very good. Yes, but, we should also be friendly and welcoming to other people and not be like, not be exactly like a piece of wood. Okay? Or a piece of wood is, doesn't say hello or anything. Okay. So verse 37, to check if there is any danger on the path. Okay. I should look again in all four directions. To rest, I should turn my head around and then look behind me. Okay, so this is another reason for looking, both where you're going and resting your gaze and looking around at other things to see if there's danger on the path. So if you drive a car, you know this, okay? Yeah, because you have to keep the people who are on your blind side, people in your rearview mirror, in front of you, driving up on your left. You have to keep the whole scene in mind so you can drive and safely. And you have to also be aware of where the stoplights are and the stop signs. And also, if you're driving in Seattle, know all the corners where they don't have stop signs. They just have circles in the middle where you could really easily get into an accident. Right? Seattle, former Seattleites, not so safe. And on the residential streets there. Yeah. Okay, so you look ahead and behind. Yeah. And, you know where you are in space. And, it's similarly walking around here because, you're not walking on a city sidewalk or a city street where you can assume that everything's level. And like I mentioned last week, if you came from Seattle, you know that the sidewalks are not level and you better watch where you're going. Okay, so, we maintain an awareness of where we are in space. And also, I think it's important going up and down stairs. Yeah, I cannot, there's a number of times, especially our stairway here, where I've been going around Kuan Yin, and I've gotten run down by people running down on this stairway, and you just come right into the foyer, and people don't look where they're going. You assume that nobody else is going around the statue, and yet it's a place where many people walk, isn't it? So you have to be aware when you come off the stairway, are other people coming from the opposite direction? Or if you're coming from the media room into the foyer, there are people walking down the corridor where the women's rooms are, and they're coming in to that area, and then you're coming in from the media room, and you get run down there too. Okay? So we have to be aware of where we're going. It's not just this building, in public buildings too, to be aware. And on corridors, yeah, to be aware of where you're walking in the corridor and, not knocking things off that are hung on the walls and knocking into people. And, some corridors are especially narrow. So you have to give way. Imagine that you have to step to the side and let somebody else go past you. And on the road, the path here to go Taming, how many times do you meet somebody coming the other direction? And they should just get out of your way. Doesn't matter who it is. Yeah. They should just get out of your way. Yeah. So I get out of people's way, because I don't want to run down, because a lot of people are just intent on getting where they're going. And, doesn't matter who else is in the way there. Okay. So we have to, be aware of where we are in space and who else is around us. Yeah. I think, those of you who've worked in offices before, that. Yeah. And it's something we have to be considerate of the other beings around us. Okay. So then verse 38, having examined both ahead and behind, I should proceed to either come or go. Yeah. Being aware of the necessity for such mindful alertness, I should behave like this in all situations. So that's really true. If you are in a crowd and you're together with other people, yeah, you have to keep your eyes on, the people that you're together with, otherwise you're going to get separated from them. Okay. If you've ever been at an Indian train station with friends, or with coolies, you put your eyes on whoever has your suitcase, and you do not take your eyes off that person. Because the moment you do, they're going one direction with your suitcase, and you're standing there going, where am I? Where's my train? Okay. Or if you're wheeling your own suitcase, who's ever ahead of you, you keep your eyes on that person who's in your group to make sure you get to the train cart all together. Because seriously, if any of you have been in that situation, you know that if you, while you're walking, stop to look around, you will lose the person in front of you. So and in an Indian train station, you do not want to not know where you're going. Okay. And the same when you get on the train, you need to, follow the coolie or follow, who's ever guiding you there when one of your friends is taking you to the train station, just to even find your compartment and your seat. So I'm sure we have many stories to share about that. Okay. But also, if you're going to His Holiness's teaching somewhere and you're going with other people, again, if it's a big teaching, okay, here in the States, maybe they give you seats, but if you're going to a public teaching in India and you want to sit with people, you got to stick together to get there because there's no seats. There's an area for you to sit, and maybe you'll make it to that area and maybe you won't. And then once within that area where you're going to sit, it's up for grabs, even if you've put down your dingwa the night before or something else the night before. People move that, because they want to sit there. So, we have to pay attention to these kinds of things. Okay. And even here, if you go to people who go to concerts or people who go to the disco or any kind of, public thing, you go to an art show with a lot of different people, then, you have to be mindful of where you are and where your friends are and what things you've seen and which room you're in and, just even going to a museum sometimes. Okay. Okay, so 39. Once having prepared for an action with the thought, my body will remain in such a way, then periodically I should look to see how the body is being maintained. Okay, so the previous ones were talking a lot about when we're in movement. Okay, so there's different areas to be aware physically when we're standing, moving, sitting, and lying down, those 4. Okay, so now we're going into probably sitting. Okay. So once I've prepared for an action with the thought, my body will remain in such a way, then periodically I should look to see how the body is being maintained. Okay. So we, as monastics, we don't cross our legs at the knee. Maybe you can cross them at the ankle, although in some countries it is rude to cross your legs at your ankles. So you need to learn the customs of different countries if you're traveling and teaching, okay? But we don't cross our legs at the knees. We try and keep our legs down flat on the floor, or we cross them at the ankles. Here in the States, you cross them at the ankles, it's okay. Some countries, it's not okay. Where do you sit? Be aware of where you sit, who you're with. Okay, if you're going to visit, your teacher, you go in and you make 3 bows and then you sit on the floor unless you're offered a chair. Okay. If you're going to visit a Tibetan Lama, you go in with a kata, you go in with an offering, unless it's somebody that you see very regularly. Okay. So we have to learn the right way to behave with people within the monastic community. And the traditions are different. They can be different in different Buddhist traditions, although what is always the same is that the senior goes first and the junior pays respect to the senior. How you pay respect, when you pay respect, those differ from tradition to tradition. The Chinese have a tradition that when you arrive at a monastery, maybe you put your things down or whatever, and then the first place you go is into the Buddha hall. You bow 3 times to pay respect to the Buddha, and then you say, I bow 3 times to pay respect to the abbot or abbess, who usually says 1 bow, and so you make 1 bow. I tried to have people do that here, but somehow it doesn't happen so much. But it would be really good when guests come to visit the Abbey, or when you return, not necessarily from going to town on an errand, but you return from a trip or you're away a few days. You put your things down and then you go into the meditation hall. You bow to the Buddha 3 times. Okay. If guests are coming, you bring them into the hall, have them show respect. Okay. Take them to meet the teacher, although sometimes it's just too interrupting. I have, where Sangha Kadra has infinite people walking in, not infinite, but many people walking in and out. So what you do is the next mealtime, you introduce the person. You don't just leave the new person sitting here not knowing who's who or where to sit or anything like that. Yeah. So regardless of whether you're the guest master or you're that person's buddy, you help the new people who come. Because remember when you were a new person and you didn't know where to go, where to sit, what to do. Okay? So it's all of our responsibility, that kind of thing. Okay? But here, if we determine, okay, I'm going to sit down, then we sit down, yeah, and we stay seated. And we try not to, rustle around and get up and down and, just especially in the middle of a teaching, But even in regular company, yeah, if you have to go to the bathroom, it's one thing, but not to get up and down and go here and there and, twitch or not twitch, but, keep shifting or everything. Okay. Now, having said that, the other night when we were doing chanting, okay, I was trying to bow. When I was doing it, I was stepping on my robe, so I couldn't get up and I couldn't hear the bell because the person who was dinging it was going like this. And so I had to wait until the person next to me got up because I didn't wear my hearing aids, because if I wear my hearing aids to chanting, then the wooden fish chases me out of the room. And so I could go on and on and on. But anyway, my body was not doing it what I wanted it to do. Okay. So I was not a very good example a couple of days ago. So I want to make that clear so that other people don't say, well, you didn't get up when everybody else did, and you got up later, and, And then in the middle of the, sitting, you take off your sweater. Well, how about hot flashes, girls, So, but you try when you're somewhere, you put your body and you stay there and you try and be, respectful of other people. Okay. And you check up from time to time. How am I sitting? Am I sitting slouched in my chair? Yeah. So there you are, especially you're meditating. Yeah. Then Well, you don't lean back so much because otherwise you knock the person behind you, but you're leaning forward. Yeah, you think I don't see? I stand out there and watch. Sometimes people are... Okay. So, we should check when we're sitting, what is my posture? Is my body sitting the way it should? Yeah. Or am I twisting around? Am I, there's some people, they're not this group. They're I stand out there, especially on SDDs when I'm waiting to come in and you're meditating. And some people are like this, and some people, they even make eye contact with me, like, what are you doing here? No awareness of why do I have my eyes open during meditation. Yeah. So, to remain mindful of how you want your body to be and then being that way. Okay. Okay, so periodically check to see how your body is being maintained. Yeah. If you're walking, you can swing your arms like this, but not, unless you're exercising, you're not wildly, not bumping into people or hitting people or whatever. Okay. Then verse 40, with the utmost effort, I should check to see that the crazed elephant of my mind is not wandering off, but is bound to the great pillar of thinking about Dharma. So that's really the thing, whatever we're doing to, be aware of what our mind is thinking about. Yeah. Are we thinking about something dharmic? Yeah. Even walking from one building to the next. I mean, I think everybody knows how easy it is when you're driving, people who are going to work. You drive from home to work. Yeah. What are you thinking about the whole time? Yeah, it's a really interesting exercise. When you arrive at work, say, what did I think about that whole time? Some people are on the road for an hour commuting, or even a half an hour. No idea what was going through their mind. Yeah. And the same just walking one place to the other. So there's times when you just have to relax your mind, but even within relaxing your mind, you make sure that you're not thinking about something that is just nourishing the afflictions. Because it's so easy when we leave one situation and go to the next to then either, what do the people think about me there? Did I say the right thing? Did I say the wrong thing? This is one reason why we keep silence during, courses, and why we try not to talk excessively, because when we talk a lot, then, as soon as we leave, we're revisiting the conversation. And what did they say to me? What did they mean by that? Yeah. Oh, and then I replied this way. Are they going to like me for what I said? Oh, maybe they're not going to like me. Well, nobody in this whole place likes me. And there you are off and running. Okay. So, it's very important really for our own sanity and our own safety to be aware of what's going on in our mind and not just let the mind go all over the place. Yeah. Yeah. This is one of the how people get fascinated with conspiracy theories. Yeah. You hear one little thing, especially with QAnon, where you are left to your own devices to develop one theory or another, and then you contribute to it. You write it, apparently, and then, yeah. So then, you could be going off. You read one thing on QAnon, or you heard one thing, on some tweet. And then your mind is off and running about extrapolating on what's the meaning of this and how could people do that and this and ho and hum. And your mind just goes crazy with it all. Okay. So very important, not just for our own sanity and happiness now, but to protect the mind from creating so much negativity. Yeah. So whenever you come across things like that, and if you notice your mind is thinking about that, instantly, think about, well, this is the nature of samsara, or have compassion for those beings. Yeah. Replace your anger or your distrust or whatever with some kind of dharma thought. Okay, so to prevent the crazed elephant of our mind from wandering all around, a crazed elephant. Elephants are big. When elephants are mad, they trample everything. You got to get out of the way really fast, because not only do they trample the crops, but they'll trample people and, as well. I mean, they're really big if you've ever stood next to an elephant. Yeah. And so our mind, our afflicted mind, can be crazy like that. Yeah. I mean, I'll give you one example. I just read one thing today. Okay. So in South Carolina, apparently there's some military base. So some trainee on the military base, there was a school bus going around with, I don't know how many kids, 12 or 18 kids, something like that. And the guy from the military bus with a rifle boarded the school bus. Yeah. And said to the driver, I don't want to hurt you or the kids, but I want you to drive me to the next town. He was hijacking the school bus. Can you imagine what that was like for the kids or for the bus driver? Yeah. Apparently, he brought the kids up front, and the kids started asking, are you going to hurt us? Are you going to hurt the bus driver? So the guy got a little bit agitated. So eventually the bus driver stopped at the side of the road. He took all the kids off, and he got off. And the hijacker drove the bus a little bit on. And then the bell rang to come to class. So I don't know what happened after that. But, yeah. But this is what happens when the mind becomes like a crazed elephant. I mean, the guy's not thinking clearly. So, I'm sure he got arrested for that. And his whole life will be completely different now because of doing that. Yeah. So the crazed elephant of the mind, it could change the whole direction of your life, because it can lead us to do one really stupid thing, And those kids, I hope they're okay, and I hope they get some counseling and a lot of love, because it would sure be scary for them. Yeah. How many of you rode school buses on the way to school? Yeah. So, okay. Then 41. Those who strive by all means for concentration should not wander off even for a moment. By thinking, how is my mind behaving, they should closely analyze their mind. So this is showing the link between developing mindfulness and introspective awareness of your body and of your mind, especially, of your body in terms of ethical conduct, of your mind in terms of developing concentration. Okay, so when you sit down to meditate, if you're doing, concentration style meditation, then you want to keep your mind on one object and always check, are you on that object? Or are you falling into laxity or into restlessness? Okay. But if you're doing analytic meditation on the Lam Rim, then you're actively thinking. So your mind could be changing objects, but you need to make sure that you're staying on the topic that you set out to meditate on, that you're not kind of going all over the board. Okay. So by thinking, how is my mind behaving? They should closely analyze their mind. Now, and before you go to sleep, also very good to make sure your mind is thinking about something virtuous, because that will really affect your dreams. If you watch the news right before you go to sleep, or if you're, reading nobody here does this, I hope, read sci-fi books, or stuff like that right before you go to sleep, then that's going to influence how you sleep. Yeah. And then you often wake up thinking about what you were thinking about when you fell asleep. So it can affect your mood the next day too. Then verse 42, however, if I am unable to do this, when afraid or involved in celebrations, then I should relax. Likewise, it has been taught that at times of giving, one may be neutral to certain aspects of moral discipline. Okay, there's a footnote here. What is it? Oh, it's just the sutra quote from that. Okay, so, if we're in certain circumstances where we really can't maintain a lot of very close mindfulness, maybe, there's a lot of people talking around us, or people asking us questions, or we're in a big crowd, or we're afraid something is happening. There's a spider in your room and you're freaking out even though it's this big. Then, in those situations, he's saying, you relax your mind a little bit. That doesn't mean that you let your mind go everywhere it wants to. Yeah, it means if you're afraid, you pay attention to what's going on and you figure out a way to solve the situation. It doesn't mean that you just, I can't keep mindfulness, so now I'm just going to go to my old habit and get hysterical or get angry and aggressive or whatever. It doesn't mean that, okay? Or involved in celebrations. So sometimes you're in a celebration kind of thing. Maybe it depends what the celebration is. If you're in a celebration with lay people, I think you have to be really careful where your mind's going. Yeah. In a Dharma celebration, maybe everybody's sitting down, you're chanting together, so you can, relax it a little bit there. In other words, what he's saying here is, don't be so uptight that everywhere you're going, you're so rigid, about watching your mind that you're unfriendly and not engaging with other people. Okay. This is the way I was when I first, I took the 8 precepts before I went back from Nepal to the States to see my parents. And when I was at my parents' house, I was so stiff, It's like, because I don't want to break my precepts. And, okay, I'll sit down at the dinner table with you, but I'm not eating anything. And they're talking about this and that. Well, that's idle talk. I'm not talking with them. So I don't want to create idle talk. I was so stiff. Yeah, so it means don't do like that. On the other hand, don't go back to the way you were when you were a lay person. Yeah, listen to this story. I'll tell you, it's such a great story. Waving your hands all around, Similarly, when we greet people, we should greet them like this. Yeah, if you're greeting your family, maybe you lightly touch them or something like that. We shouldn't go, hello, I haven't seen you in so long, and scream and wave our hands around, throw our arms around the other person when everybody's looking. And okay, especially as monastics, okay? Even as lay people, it's just, yes, you're very happy to see somebody, but you can show that happiness and be calm at the same time without just going crazy. Because I've seen people act like that. It doesn't look good. It just doesn't look good. Okay. And 43, I should undertake whatever deed I have intended to do and think of doing nothing other than it. With my mind applied to that task, I should set about for the time being to accomplish it. Okay? So during the day, we probably have different things that we need to do. So what this is saying is, establish in your mind what you're doing when, and then when you start something, don't let yourself get interrupted in the middle of it. Okay? This, I find, is one of the disadvantages of having your email open all the time, or for people who have text messaging, to have your phone on your all the time, because you're always getting some email, some text message, or a phone call, and whatever you start out to do is getting constantly interrupted by somebody saying, hello, how long until you get here? 5 minutes. And then they call back in another 5 minutes. How long until you get there? Yeah. This is what it's like in Singapore when we drive. There's at least 5 phone calls when we start, 3 phone calls in the middle, and 1 phone call as we're driving up. Yeah, it used to be phone calls, and text messages now too, okay? So 5 within one, going from here to there, okay? So it's really not necessary. Yeah, so we should be considerate of how many emails we send to people, and not just, write when we need to, but not write when we don't need to. Okay. And, when we're doing something, sometimes just turn off your email or your text messaging for people who have that, and do your work, and the people at the other side, they will live, unless you have an appointment and, you've forgotten your appointment and they're, reminding you to come for that. But otherwise, it's hard enough focusing our mind and staying on task when we now have all these new technologies that shorten our attention span, such that you start doing something and you're instantly looking for something to distract you. Have you noticed that? You start down and it's like, okay, I'm going to work on this. And you sit down to do it. Now, I better check the email first before I do that. Or I better get up and, close the door. Or I better check if I turned off the stove. Or I better, and so we're always seeking. It's so interesting to watch the mind as if something other than what we're doing at the moment is going to be more interesting. Even though it may be, closing the door, petting the cat, putting your pen where it belongs. Who knows what it is? Yeah. So what he's saying here is when we sit down to do something, do it. Yeah. And nowadays we need to make deliberate effort not to let devices distract us. Yeah. And so, you know, for here we don't have our own phones, but people out there, you know, I notice people meet their friends and then everybody takes out their phone and puts it on the table. And then you check, you know, you've made an appointment to be with your friends, but you spend most of that time, either you're doing messages or phone calls, or they are. And then at the end you say, it was so nice to see you, but you hardly ever got to talk to that person. Okay. And if somebody doesn't do that and isn't interrupted every 3 minutes, then everybody thinks, you don't have a life, you know, nobody's contacting you. Yeah, you must be really flaky. Yeah?
It happens in business settings too. At the place that I worked before coming here, it got to the point where it was actually a rule: do not get your phone out. I mean, business phone. We're not even talking about personal phone. Do not get your business phone out during the meeting, because we want you to pay attention to what's happening in the meeting and other things that you are doing elsewhere with other projects and stuff.
Yeah. If we're in a meeting, we should pay attention, you know, to what's going on. And if we set out to do something, do that and not let ourselves get distracted. Okay. But it's so interesting to how the mind wants something new all the time, as if that's going to be better than what you're doing already. Yeah. Very weird the way the mind works. Okay. Yeah, and so think of doing nothing other than it. When you need a break, take a break. Get up, walk around, stretch. You know, they say that that's really good for your health. Yeah, to take a physical break where you use, you know, stretch your body and move your body somewhat. Yeah, try not to, you know, well, I'll go check my email at that time. You know, because then you're off and running and doing that. Okay, so, yeah, with your mind applied to that task, set out for the time being to accomplish it. So when you are doing that, work on that. That's the time being. When you finish, you can put it down. You can go work on something else. Yeah, but it is difficult. Yeah, yeah. Especially when you know you open your email and then, you know, you've been gone like a half an hour and then there's 10 emails. Yeah. So you think, oh, I should just keep it on and doing so I don't have so many at the end. No. Yeah. Okay. So that was 43. 44, by acting in this way, all will be done well. And that's true. You know, when we focus on what we're doing, then we do it well. When we are constantly getting up and doing something else and letting ourselves get interrupted, then we get completely confused, you know, especially if you're writing something. Yeah. Or if you're working with numbers, oh my goodness. Yeah. There's so many ways you just get confused and you either skip a step or you repeat something or, you know, like that. But if we really focus, then all will be done well. But by acting otherwise, neither action will be done. Yeah, and there'll be mistakes in both of them. Likewise, there will be no increase in the proximate disturbing conceptions that come from a lack of alertness. So if we can focus on what we're doing, you know, keep the mind there, then it's done well. Yeah, if we can't do that, it's not done well. Yeah, and that just pertains to the task, but in terms of our own mind, when we let ourselves get distracted, then it's so easy, our mind gets into afflictions and thinking in an afflicted way. You know, because you're working on something, an email or a text comes in, you think, I'll just look at it. And then the person is saying something, they or all of a sudden changing the schedule or wanting to do something you don't think is such a good idea. And then you have to respond immediately, because if you don't tell them their idea is wrong, the whole world's going to fall apart. And so then you get distracted, writing that email, talking about this other issue. And then you come back to what you were doing, and it's like, where was I? Okay. So we want to really watch so that the mind doesn't just start taking afflictions and running with them. And if you're doing a project, that takes many days, and you need materials or something, or even if it just takes one day, think ahead about what you need. Yeah, so that if you have to go to buy something or get materials even from around the Abbey, you go and you do that so that what you have is there when you need it, so that right in the middle of doing something, you need to go, oh God, I need this and that. And it's, I have to get it in town, but nobody's going to town today. So then I can't continue with the project that I'm doing because I have to wait until somebody goes to town, but if you think in advance and get the things you need in advance, then that doesn't happen. You can continue with the project, that you're doing, which makes things easier on us, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. Then 45, if I happen to be present while a senseless conversation is taking place, or if I happen to see some kind of spectacular show, I should abandon attachment towards it. Okay, so being present when a senseless conversation is taking place. So let's talk about senseless conversations. Sometimes, this doesn't mean that every time we talk to somebody, it has to be a deep, meaningful talk about the nature of reality, okay? It means that we should monitor what we are saying. There are times to joke around, and we do joke around here, and I think that's good. Because if you don't have a sense of humor, if you can't play, if you can't joke, then, your your mind gets so tight, okay? But that doesn't mean that once you start that it continues for a long time, okay? You joke, and then it's over, and you continue what you're doing with the other person, okay? But here, the thing I think that we really have to be careful, or at least I know for me, I can joke and play and then it's finished and get back. But when a conversation starts and people start griping about somebody else or start griping about the way something is done, it's so easy for those conversations to keep going. And that's how in a workplace, you get people dividing into cliques and into factions and turning against other people, okay, which is really harmful in a group. So this kind of senseless conversation, is often, just gossip. There's times when it is important to exchange information about what somebody else is thinking or doing, okay? And then there are times when it's just gossip, okay? I remember one time many years ago, Lama Yeshe asked me about somebody else. He said, how is so-and-so? And I didn't want to answer because I felt like, I'm just going to gossip and say all sorts of things because the person was doing some things that weren't so good. And I didn't want to say anything, because I thought, that's, idle talk. That's, I might be saying something bad about somebody. And so I said, Lama, I don't want to say And he said, no, I need to know what's happening with that person so that I can help them. Okay. So in that kind of situation, when somebody's asking you for information about a conversation you had with somebody or something, if that person, asked you to keep confidence, then you don't tell others unless it's something that's really important. I mean, there are legal things whereby if somebody tells you that they want to harm somebody else, that we're required to report it to law enforcement. Okay. So similarly, and if, if it's a situation where somebody may really be going into a not good place, then you need to say something, whether you're asked about it or not asked about it, because you care about that person and you don't want to see them slide down the slippery slope. Okay. But that is very different than gossiping. Gossiping is, we know what's gossiping, like, so-and-so, did you see what so-and-so did? What did you think of that? And it's just, it's idle talk. We don't really care. It's not really important. Yeah. Did you see how much food somebody put on their plate that day or in their bowl? Yeah. Well, I wasn't looking because I have a precept not to look in other people's bowl. But their bowl was so full, it was overflowing, I couldn't help but see it. Yeah, what do you think of that? Yeah, that they took so much food. And, I don't know about all this labeling of the food in the kitchen and this and that. And I don't know who's in charge of kitchen these last 3 months. And why do we have the system where we rotate the people in charge of the kitchen every 4 months? Why don't we do it every 3 months or every 6 months? Why do we do it at all? Why don't we just hire a cook? I mean, it would be so much easier in the monastery if we hired a cook and then we could all do the regular work we're supposed to be doing. Okay, I see lots of smiles now. Yeah. And then, you're just off. What you're doing is instead of ruminating yourself about these things, you're having a group rumination. Okay? Like, what do you think? Why don't we hire a cook? Oh, yeah, I think that's a good idea. Well, how should we approach that topic so we can get it through at one of these meetings? Well, so-and-so, if you talk to so-and-so, they always say no. If you talk to this one over here, they always want you to like them. So talk to that one. And that one, ask that one to bring it up in the group meeting. Yeah. Yeah, but don't talk to this one because this one always says no. And if you talk to that one, they ask you 10 questions about it before they give you an answer. I just want somebody on my side. Okay. So, I see lots of smiles now. So then, you plan like, okay, how am I going to bring this up? And how am I going to convince so-and-so? Yeah. Our own politicking, like, well, there's a rule that says, but, I really want this to happen. So who do I have to talk to about that? Okay, well, Venerable Fauci. Actually, she's Venerable Fussy. But actually, she's Venerable trying to keep us safe. Yeah. So, but we think she's being fussy today instead of Fauci today. So who will Venerable Fussy Fauci listen? Okay. And then we talk about that, and then plan how to, approach her. Yeah. And then meanwhile, she's sitting and thinking, well, I'm trying to follow CDC recommendations. Yeah. And they did appoint me as, the person to do this. And I have a title. Yeah. But now they want to make their own rules. They want to just go out doing whatever. They want to go into town to go shopping. Yeah? Like, they're all sitting there thinking, I want to go to Albany Falls and buy nails. I'm tired of just hanging around this Abbey. I want to go somewhere. Yeah, I want to go check out. No, I want to take the tractor in for servicing. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to drive the tractor down the road. Yeah, you pretend that you're in India driving the tractor down the highway. Yeah, you remember. Was it you who were in the car? Yes.
And we have to have 6 people in the bucket.
Do we have what?
6 people in the bucket.
Yeah, right. You know, and it's like, oh, let's see. No, I'll go to the post office. Yeah. Can I do the run on Friday? You know, I got to get out of this place and see something different. Yeah, I'm going to go to the post office with yeah. Yeah, I promise I'll generate bodhicitta posting all those things to the inmates. Okay. So, yeah. So where were we?
Campaigning for ourselves.
Yes, campaigning for ourselves in senseless conversations. Okay. So if we happen to see a spectacular show, what are kind of spectacular shows? If we get distracted on, sometimes, we see funny things on the internet and we share those too much. Okay. And then everybody is looking at Randy Rainbow or I don't know what else. You don't know who Randy Rainbow? You don't send your emails to her? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. We won't turn you on to Randy Rainbow. Yeah. Okay. But, we just find too many funny things or too many things we want other people to read. And I know for me, I'm breaking a habit of mine. When people send me emails and there's links, I feel obliged to look at that. If somebody cares enough about me that they think I should look at this, I look at it. And I am breaking that habit, and I am learning just to delete the email now, And hopefully those people won't ask me the next time they see me, well, what did you think about this, that, or the other thing? Yeah. Because otherwise, you can't finish anything. Okay. So he's saying we should abandon attachment towards it. Towards senseless conversation and spectacular shows, definitely abandon attachment. Sometimes abandon the situation. Yeah. Especially if you're with other people who are bad-mouthing somebody else. I think it's sometimes very helpful in those situations to say, I feel very uncomfortable about the way we're talking about so-and-so. Can we change the topic? And so deliberately change the topic, but tell people, I feel uncomfortable about this. Or, if they're really into it, or if you don't feel like you can say that, then, you just excuse yourself from the situation. Because it's really awful hanging around why other people are bad-mouthing somebody. Okay. Now the whole thing of racial slurs comes up. So, when do you call somebody out for saying something? And what does call them out mean? Yeah. Does it mean in the middle of the conversation you stop and you say, don't say that word, that's a racial slur? Yeah. Or in the middle of a meeting you do that? Or does it mean you approach the other person afterwards and say something? And how do you say something to somebody? Do you just say, don't you know better? That's not going to work. Okay. And if you have any sense of kind of judgment, then people get really turned off by that. So it's a delicate thing, we need to say something, but we need to do it in a skillful way where it keeps the door open and we don't get into a cultural war with the person that we're living with or the person that you're working with. Yeah. Because those kinds of things can easily flare up, and it's difficult because words that were okay to say before now are no longer okay to say. Yeah. Somebody, in a class at some university, it was a law class, and they were quoting what some justice, somebody here or there had said. The N-word was in it, and they said the word because they were just reading what the previous justice said. Well, a lot of people were some people were very offended by that, And so even if you're quoting somebody, you shouldn't say that. But they were reading the thing. I mean, so how much do you rewrite what somebody else says? Because what was okay to say before is no longer okay. I'm not saying that it was okay to use racial slurs before. I'm just saying that nobody would stop and interrupt at that time. But now, you're expected to say something. So it gets very kind of confusing and sometimes very touchy to the extent when you're around certain people, you feel like you can't talk because you might accidentally say something that you aren't as woke as the other person. Yeah. And so then they get very upset with you for not being so woke, and you say, but I didn't know, or, that doesn't matter. You should have known. Yeah. So I've had that happen to me. And, but then there are situations where you have to you have to say something. But you have to say something in a way, such a way, so that the other person doesn't feel attacked, And it's often good to start to say, you may not know this, but some people are sensitive to this word. Yeah. It's the same way when people come here and they don't know how, etiquette in a Buddhist monastery. We don't go up to them and say, don't point the soles of your feet at the Buddha statue, you jerk. You say, you may not know this, but, in the hall, when we stretch out our legs, we do it to the side of the room. So there's different ways of getting messages across to people. So that they don't feel threatened and they don't feel criticized. So we have to be sensitive to that. Yeah. And sensitive to what we say too. And it's difficult because if you belong to a persecuted group, the people in that group can tease and joke and say things about the stereotypes that are directed towards them. But other people cannot do that. Okay. So those of you who watch the Saturday Night Seder, there's one guy who says, oh, the thing I love most about being Jewish is controlling all the banks and wanting to dominate the world, And he says it with a straight face. And like everybody who's Jewish, laughs, because that's the standard stereotype. Yeah. But, when Trump put the Star of David behind Hillary Clinton and talked about her raking in money, that is really offensive. Okay. So to figure out how to navigate some of these things can be difficult, especially if you don't know what's sensitive to a certain group. I mean, I grew up on the West Coast, so there's some whole thing about African Americans and watermelon. I had no idea. You must know about it. You grew up in Georgia. You know, there's something about, some stereotype about, do you know what it is? Yeah, you were in.
It's just the stereotype that African Americans like watermelon.
Melon, yeah, because they're sitting in, well, anyway, whatever it is, some stereotype that is denigrating towards African Americans, okay? So if you don't know that, because you grew up in a different part of the country, then, you can easily stick your foot in your mouth without even realizing it, And so if you belong to a certain cultural group, you have to also, and some people may disagree, not be so sensitive to every small thing people say. And pick out the things where you think you need to say something to somebody. And then other things, just let it go, it depends so much on your relationship to that person. If you're very good friends, you could say, you may not know this, you grew up in a different part of the country, but this kind of thing, You could say that to somebody you know very well, but to somebody at the post office, you may not say that. But to somebody at the Social Security office who is not being treated fairly, then you need to say something. Okay? So things are different in different situations, and how you say it has, can be very touchy. The whole thing about wearing masks. Who was it? Tucker Carlson was telling people now, that when they see people with masks on, that you should go up to them and ask them to take their mask off because you don't feel comfortable with people with masks around. It used to be that everybody was supposed to wear masks, and if you saw somebody not wearing a mask, you would go up to them and say, please put on your mask for safety. But now he's telling people the opposite, So it's like, so how are you going to react to all these things? If somebody comes up and tells you to take your mask off, are you going to get mad at them? Are you going to start a whole discussion about why are you watching Fox News? Or are you going to yell at them? Or are you just going to say, I prefer to keep my mask on and just let it go. So to be sensitive to different situations, what your relationship is with somebody. How you say things. Tone of voice is really important. Okay. So, and to know that all these things change. What is considered, language is changing all the time, and what different words mean changes all the time, and to keep up with it all is really difficult. So sometimes people are going to call you out for things that you had no idea about. So whole thing is, learn when to chill out. Well, we should always chill out. Getting offended about things, even if somebody means to insult us, there's no reason to get angry about that. When we get angry, we don't communicate well. Okay. So we should always chill out. But then deciding what to say to the other person in response is something that we have to see situation to situation. For example, I told you about the time, let me just mark this. Okay. When I was in an airport, and, I always have the situation because people attend talks that I've given, and then they meet me somewhere, and I don't know who they are, but they know me. And so somebody was coming up to me in an airport smiling, and I thought, okay, it must be somebody who, I don't know their face, I don't know who they are. And she leans over and she says, "It's Jesus." So it's like, what do I do? It's like, hey, what are you doing trying to convert me in an airport? If I want to believe in Jesus, I'm going to believe in Jesus. I don't believe in Jesus. Why are you trying to bug me about all this? Don't you have any manners? I could reply like that. Yeah. And I just smiled back and went back to what I was doing. It's like, do I really need to correct everybody? But when I'm on a long flight and somebody is trying to convert me, which happens fairly regularly, then I will respond, and I will discuss with them, and I will say, please, I respect what my beliefs. I'm living an ethical life, I'm not going to ignore it because they'll just keep talking. And I'm not going to turn around and say, shut up, because that's not my way. I don't handle things that way. Okay, see, we have to see. But anyway, we have to just make it so that we don't get offended. Yeah. I say, that's what I learned from my 7th grade episode that all of you have heard many times, where somebody made us in current events class on Monday morning. I won't say his name because he might be listening. Actually, I would like to meet him again and apologize. And maybe he'll apologize too. Anyway, where he made some kind of slur. And I ran out of my 7th grade class and spent the whole rest of the day crying in the girls' bathroom because I thought that's what you were supposed to do if people said, racist comments. And I learned from that situation, no, I don't want to spend my life doing that. Okay. Yeah. I'm leaving it to the rest of you to keep the tissue company up and running, at least for crying. Okay. Some of you do quite well. Yeah. Okay. Any questions? Comments? Okay. Nothing online? Okay, then we'll dedicate.